Alright, Algebra 1, Chapter 10 review. We're talking about radicals. Okay, I'm going to breeze through some of these, and some of these I will highlight. So here you can see the work how to do numbers 1 and 2, if you haven't caught on how to do that on your calculator. The TIXS, 30XS will do that on the calculator, simplifying these. So, there we go. If you have a radical expression in the denominator, we expand that with a conjugate. Remember that we just changed the minus to a plus. That gives us a difference of squares. So 1 squared is 1. Radical 3 squared is 3. It's a difference of squared, which means minus. To do 4 times 1, that's 4. And 4 times radical 3 is 4 radical 3. So that gives us 4 plus 4 radical 3 over negative 2. We can simplify. 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2, and 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2 times radical 3. And there's our answer. All right, here. And right here, 52. What goes into 52? That is 13 times 4. And 4 can be simplified, so we have 2. Square root of 4 is 2, and then g squared, square root of g squared is g, and we're left with 13r. Alright, here I've already done all this work for you. If you're curious how to do it, we multiply the coefficients and multiply the radicals, and then simplify the radicals if they can be simplified. Okay. Number 9 is pretty easy, pretty basic. Remember to first isolate the radical, square each side, and then solve an equation. Number 10, this one's going to be one of the hardest problems. We need to isolate the radical, which means subtract 10 from each side. Okay, so that gives us square root of x minus 8 is equal to 10x minus 10. Now, square this. Careful here, don't make the mistake of just applying a square to each one of these. On this side, that gives us x minus 8. On this side, this expression squared, remember to use the box for this. Many of you might make this mistake. I saw that today. While we were working on this, many of you did make the mistake and didn't fill in the box. Once you filled in the box, you get x squared minus 20x plus 100. Then we want to use the property of 0, product property of 0, so we want to make this side 0. So we're going to add 8, and we're going to subtract the x here, making this side 0. And then we subtract the x here. Careful, that doesn't just cancel out the x. I'm subtracting 1x. So that leaves us with x squared minus 21x plus 108. And now I'm going to factor this. Okay, so I have to figure out what numbers multiply to 108 and add to negative 21. Well, 108, we get 9 and 12 go into 108. And they have to be both be negative in order to go into 21. And so then back to our box. Top left is x squared, bottom right is 108. Negative 9x here and negative 12x there. What do these have in common? X. These have an x. These have a negative 12. And these have a negative 9. So I have x minus 12. Goodness. X minus 9 is equal to 0. So in this case right here, that gives me a positive 12, here a positive 9. Now, those are two solutions. However, I have to check them up here. So I'm going to plug in 9. 9 for x there, 9 for x here. 9 minus 8 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. That would give us 10 plus 1. Does that equal 9? No, 10 plus 1 is 11. Now remember to check your other answer too, just in case. 12 minus 8 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So I'm plugging in 12 for x. Square root of 4 is 2. 10 plus 2 is 12. Very nice. That's our answer. This is not. Okay, go back and practice, especially this section right here. Okay, that's where I see a lot of mistakes happen. Alright, find the missing length. The first thing we need to determine is which side is C. Okay, this is C, this is C. If we're looking for C, then we can find C by finding the square root of the other two sides squared and added. 22 squared plus 28.5 squared. And that is approximately 36. Rounded to the nearest tenth, because that's 36.0034. Okay, over here we are looking for A. We're not looking for C. So if we're not looking for C, we have to subtract the other side from C. So A is equal to the square root of 26 squared minus 2 squared. So then A is equal to, and you can type this into your calculator. If you have your calculator set to math print, it'll give you 4 radical 42. However, we're talking about distance here, so 4 radical 42 in this case is not necessarily useful. Plus they said round to the nearest tenth, so that is 25.9. You can hit the toggle button on your calculator to change that from math print. Alright, the distance formula. Here I will remind you of our little trick. The distance between these two, remember from x to x, the distance is 5. I have to square that and add that to the distance from y to y. From y to y, and that is 6 squared. And then find the square root of that. So 25 plus 36, square root of that is 61. That can't be simplified, so that's my answer. Midpoint between the two. Okay, the midpoint between the two, what's halfway between 0 and 5? 2.5. What's halfway between negative 4 and 2? I can add them together and divide by 2, or we can count from one to the other, and that is negative 1. Now notice these don't get added. That's a comma right here. Okay, that's a coordinate. This is an x coordinate. That's the difference of the x values. This is the y coordinate. Not the difference. It's the average of these two values together. Same procedure for 14 and 15. All right. Do we know whether these are similar? Well, if they are, the proportions would have to be the same. But first, we want to determine which sides are corresponding sides. Here's the right angle. So this side is C, so I'm going to have to put 17.5 with 5. So I'm going to put 17.5 over 5, and that gives me 3.5. Now between the other two, to figure out the corresponding sides, I have to check which one's the shortest side. This one's shorter than that one, so that goes with a 3. So I'm going to have 10.5 over 3, and that is 3.5. And then here, the longer of the two legs is this one, and that gives me 14 over 4, and that is 3.5. Okay, in this one, I need to figure out the angles, because if all the angles are the same, then they are similar. So to figure that out here, I have to do 180 minus these two added together. 75 plus 50, and that gives me 55. So that is this angle here. Because these two are vertical angles, I know that this is 50. If that's 50 and this is 55, this one has to be 75, and that makes these two similar. Alright, here to determine are these the lengths of a right triangle, we just check does a squared plus b squared equal c squared. Now, if you notice, these all have a 5 in common. If you divide them by 5, you get 3, 4, 5. And you know that that is a right triangle. So, this does check out. Yes, it is. Yes. They are the lengths of a right triangle. To find the missing measure, if I know c, then I have to do c squared. If you know the lengths of a and c, subtract their squares and you'll get the square of b. Oh, and then square root it. There's nothing to it to find the measure of the longest side. Okay, so then we get 80. Again, here you might recognize that we can simplify this. We get 6, 10, and those can be simplified too. Then we have another 3, 4, 5 triangle. Same procedure down here, and you can just type this entire expression in your calculator. Okay, find the measure of side B using the measure of the given sides. So, same procedure, c squared minus a squared. So, 54 squared minus 15 squared, and then square root that puppy. Okay, same thing, numbers 22 and 23. Easy peasy. Here we want to know, are these the measures? So first we determine which side is C. That would have to be this one. Okay, in this case we know that 9 squared is 81. So the square root of 106 is bigger than 9, so that would have to be C. So these two squared and added together would have to equal this one. If that is true, then it is the measure of a right triangle. If they do equal, then it's yes and equals. If they don't equal, it has to be no and doesn't equal. Okay? So in this case, for 24, it would be A, no, because these two together squared do not equal this one squared. Here it is yes, and it has to be equals because these two equal that. And that's about it. Remember to study, study, study. You got this.